Bouvet Island, Bouvet, is an uninhabited subantarctic volcanic island located at approximately 54 deg 25 feet, 3 deg 21 feet in the South Atlantic Ocean. It lies at the southern end of the mid-Atlantic ridge, at the so-called Bouvet Triple Junction, where the African, South American, and Antarctic tectonic plates meet. As the world's most remote island, Bouvet rises steeply from the ocean floor, more than 4 kilometers below sea level, to a maximum elevation of 780 meters at Olavtoppen. The island covers only about 49 square kilometers and is overwhelmingly glaciated, over 90% ice covered. The ice cap is relatively static, flowing down the volcanic flanks without major crevasses and ending in near, vertical ice cliffs. Emergent land is largely confined to steep coastal areas, a few rocky outcrops, and recently exposed ground, for example at Niroisa on the west coast. The largest ice-free area, Niroisa, was created by a massive landslide between 1955 and 1958. Geologically, Bouvet Island is a stratovolcano of relatively young age. Potassium, argon dating, indicates that the volcano emerged above sea level only 1 to 2 million years ago. The island's structure includes features such as an ice-filled caldera, Wilhelmplatte, nearly 3.5 kilometers wide. Volcanic activity has been recent in geological terms. Ash layers and historical records suggest eruptions as late as 50 BCE. Its basaltic to silicic volcanic rocks are part of the mid-Atlantic ridge system, reflecting its tectonic significance. These features identify Bouvet Island as a classic isolated volcanic landform. There is no connection to ancient continental crust, but rather a mid-oceanic volcanic edifice rising abruptly from the abyssal plain. Climate and environmental conditions. Bouvet Island has a cold, moist maritime Antarctic climate. D lies south of the Antarctic convergence, in the maritime Antarctic zone, meaning its weather is governed by polar and subpolar air masses. The climate is famously harsh and variable. The sky is usually overcast with persistent fog or low cloud, and high winds are common. Average annual temperatures hover near -1 degree Celsius 1, with narrow seasonal swings. January to February, austral midsummer. Highs average only about +2 degrees Celsius, and winter lows around -4 degrees Celsius. Under rare clear sky conditions on sunlit rocky surfaces, daytime temperatures can spike well above freezing. Observations have reached +14 degrees Celsius. But such warm anomalies are short-lived. Precipitation is frequent, mostly as snow and drizzle, though reliable gauges are lacking. Weather stations have been operated only sporadically. For example, a temporary AWS in 1978-79. But climatological data indicate generally moist conditions. A recent analysis of ice cores from Bouvet shows surprisingly little surface melt, only about 10% of annual accumulation, reflecting that even though Bouvet is the northernmost of these subantarctic ice cap sites, its maritime climate stays cold enough to limit melting. The prevailing winds are generally westerly, blowing off the ocean, and storms can be severe. In sum, Bouvet's environment combines persistent ice cover with a cold, cloudy oceanic climate. The surrounding Southern Ocean waters are cold and nutrient. Rich satellite studies and surveys show strong phytoplankton blooms and dense krill swarms, particularly to the south of the island, fed by upwelling and the convergence zone. Terrestrial ecosystems. Vegetation. Nearly all of Bouvet Island is glaciated, so terrestrial life is restricted to sparse biological communities in ice-free areas. The only plants are cryptogams, chiefly lichens, mosses, liverworts, and a few algae. No flowering plants, vascular plants, are found. Recorded flora include at least 5 moss species, for example Andrea, Brachythecium, Polytrichum, Tortulo, 6 species of lichenized fungi, Ascomycetes, and about 20 species of algae, both snow algae and green algae like Prasiola or C, lettuce types. These lichens and mosses are typical of the subantarctic flora, closely resembling those of the South Sandwich and South Shetland Islands. Many are found only on exposed rock ridges, coastal cliffs, nunataks, or the gently sloping Nyrasa plain, where snow cover is intermittent. For example, one survey noted that Nyrasa supports 5 mosses, 6 lichens, and -20 algae. More than half of the island's ascomycete fungi, symbiotic in lichens, are endemic to Bouvet. Vegetation is extremely limited in extent. Most ice. Free slopes are too steep or subject to avalanches to permit much growth. Apart from a few sheltered sites, like old weather station sites or penguin rookeries, plants are found in thin mats around rock outcrops or on moist soil patches. Moss tufts often form the basis of these communities, sometimes intermingled with algal crusts and fruticose lichens, for example, Eusneo, stereoculon. Snow algae, red or green patches on melting snow and ice, are also present in spring. In summary, Bouvet's terrestrial ecosystem is a classic Antarctic subnival community, low in diversity, dominated by cryptogams, and adapted to cold, nutrient, poor and windy conditions. Terrestrial ecosystems. Arthropods. The only free, living animals on Bouvet Island are microscopic arthropods, springtails and mites. Intensive sampling, especially during the 1978-79 Norwegian Antarctic expedition, has identified just 3 species of collembola, springtails, and 4 species of acari, free, living soil mites on the island. This low diversity reflects Bouvet's extreme isolation and youth. Known acari species include Nanorchestes antarcticus, a prostigmatid mite, Proterionetes minutus, Alaskazetes, Antarcticus subspecies intermedius, an orobatid mite, and Stuacaris evansi, a mesostigmatid mite. The collembola are Cryptopicus antarcticus, Archisotoma brucel, and Freesio tilbrookii. All of these species are common elsewhere in the Antarctic subantarctic region. For example, C. antarcticus is widespread in the maritime Antarctic, while Freeson tilbrookii had previously been known only from South Georgia. On Bouvet, C. antarcticus is extremely abundant, thousands per sample, and found on all moss, lichen sites, whereas the other springtails and mites occur in smaller, patchy populations. In practice, these micro-arthropods are collected by sifting or heat, extracting small samples of moss, lichen and algal material at ice, free sites, often near bird or seal colonies, where guano adds nutrients. Vegetation, mainly mosses, 5 species, liverworts, -6 lichen species, ascomycetes, and -20% T algae, for example, Prasiolus pp, found on snow, free rock and soil, no vascular plants. Arthropods, only microfauna. 3 springtail, collembola species, Cryptopicus antarcticus, Archisotoma brucei, Friesen, tilbrook and 4 mite, acari, species Nanorchestes antarcticus, Proterunates minutus, Alaskazetes antarcticus ssp. Intermedius, Stuacaris evansi. All of Bouvet's arthropods have relatives on nearby islands, implying they arrived via long to distance. Dispersal, by wind or on seabirds, rather than surviving from a pre-glacial Gondwanan fauna. Ecologically, these tiny animals play the usual roles of Antarctic soil fauna. They consume fungi, algae and decaying organic matter, helping to recycle nutrients in the sparse mossbeds. Their distribution on Bouvet parallels the limited vegetation. They are found in the few moist refuges, often under rocks, where lichens and mosses grow. Notably, no insects or larger invertebrates are present. The island's biota is at the very base of terrestrial diversity, typical of a high-latitude volcanic island. Marine ecosystems, pinnipeds and seals. Bouvet Island is an internationally important breeding ground for several pinniped seal species. The most numerous is the Antarctic fur seal, Arctocephalus gazello. Bouvet supports the world's second largest breeding population of this species. In the 1980s to 2000s, surveys at the main colony on Nairoisa Beach, the island's largest free beach, counted -15,000 fur seal pups per year, implying a total population of -66,000 adults there. This single rookery alone represents roughly 2.5% of the global A. gazella population. The population grew rapidly after protection from sealing, then stabilized. Recent counts, 2007, 2014, 2017, indicate a plateau or slight decline, suggesting the colony has reached a dynamic equilibrium. Southern elephant seals, Mirunga leonina, also breed and haul out on Bouvet, though in much smaller numbers. A modest colony of elephants occurs at Nairoisa, primarily for molting and occasional pupping. Estimates from counts and tracking suggest the Bouvet elephant seal population is only a small fraction of the Southern Ocean total. Other Antarctic seal species use Bouvet waters opportunistically. Example, Ross seals, Ommatafoca rossel, are not known to breed on land, but tracking studies suggest some Ross seals, likely from east to Antarctic ice. Breeding populations forage around Bouvet Island. Leopard seals, Hydrurga leptonix, and crabita seals, Lobodon carcinophaga, may occasionally visit, but the dominant pinnipeds associated with Bouvet are the fur seals and elephant seals. These marine mammals rely heavily on the rich krill populations of the Southern Ocean. Dietary analyses show that adult fur seals at Bouvet feed overwhelmingly on Antarctic krill, Euphausia superba, during the summer breeding season. Krill swarms are especially abundant south of Bouvet Island. Fur seals are central, place foragers tied to their Nairoisa rookery. Satellite tracking of lactating females shows they forage within a roughly 200 kilometers radius of Bouvet, including areas northward to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and equidistant sectors west, south, and east of the island. They spend most of the day diving on dense krill patches, occasionally switching to small fish when krill is scarce. Southern elephant seals undertake much longer migrations after molting tracked animals. Subadult males and adult females migrated seasonally over broad regions. Males tend to travel far south toward Antarctic Pakis and the Weddell Sea, while females remain north of the ice edge, foraging along the Antarctic circumpolar current and waters near Bouvet. Elephant seals, and even some adult males of other populations, also feed on krill and myctophid fishes, taking advantage of local productivity. Whales also exploit Bouvet's rich feeding grounds. In particular, humpback whales, Megaptera novaeanglii, that breed along the coasts of South Africa and Namibia, have been documented foraging in Bouvet waters. These whales migrate a great distance from African breeding grounds to the Antarctic feeding season, and Bouvet's waters, with their dense krill concentrations, are an important stop. Other whale species, for example minke or Antarctic blue whales, may pass by or feed near Bouvet, but detailed studies have focused on humpbacks. In general, Bouvet's marine food web is highly dependent on krill as the keystone prey. Krill feed on phytoplankton and in turn sustain the seals, penguins, whales and fish that aggregate here. For example, at least one study notes that resident fur seals consume krill nearly exclusively during the austral summer at Bouvet. Marine fauna summary. Bouvet Island's waters support 5 marine mammal species of interest: a gazella, fur seal, M. leonina, elephant seal, O. rossii, Ross seal, Megaptera novaeangliae, humpback whale, plus occasional visits by others. Key ecological facts include Antarctic fur seals, breeding colony at Nyrosa with minus 15,000 pups, year 66,000. Total, minus 2.5% global, foraging radii 200 kilometers, diet 90% krill. Southern elephant seals, small breeding group Nyrosa, tracked individuals show long. Distance foraging, males toward Antarctic continental ice, females near ACC, Bouvet. Ross seals not land, breeding. Individuals from East Antarctica appear to forage in Bouvet waters during ice. Free seasons. Humpback whales migrate from African breeding grounds to feed on Bouvet's krill. Rich waters. Krill, very high biomass recorded south of Bouvet Island, forms the base of the food web for seals and whales. Ecological interactions. The interactions on and around Bouvet are typical of southern ocean ecosystems. Massive krill populations support higher trophic levels. Fur seals and whales compete indirectly for krill, while elephant seals and petrels. Scavengers utilize leftover prey. There is little vegetation on land, so seabirds and pinnipeds are the top predators for any terrestrial nutrient input via guano. Bouvet's extreme isolation means its marine ecosystem is essentially free of introduced predators or competitors, making it a near pristine system. Human presence and activity. No permanent human population has ever lived on Bouvet Island. The only facilities have been temporary research camps or emergency shelters. The island was claimed by Norway in 1927 and designated a dependency of Norway by statute in 1930. Beginning in the 1920s, various expeditions visited Bouvet in passing. Notably, the Second Norvegia Expedition, 1928, attempted to land, and a meteorological hut was built by the Third Norvegia Expedition, 1929, at Cape Circumcision on a small adjacent islet, La Soya, but no station was maintained long-term. After World War II, Bouvet was visited a few times by navies and researchers. In 1955, the South African frigate SAS Transvaal made the first documented landing, and in 1964 the British ship HMS Protector conducted a survey. During the Protector visit, one of 2 Westland Whirlwind helicopters landed a small survey team on Nyrosa. They briefly explored the area and famously found an abandoned lifeboat in a lagoon, a mystery which highlighted Bouvet's remoteness, but they found no other evidence of earlier human presence. Significant scientific expeditions began in the late 1960s. The British Antarctic Survey carried out reconnaissance studies. For example, Holdgate et al. 1968, including geology and biology surveys. In 1978-79, the Norwegian Antarctic Research Expedition NAR established a temporary camp and weather station. This expedition was logistically important. With the aid of a helicopter brought ashore by ship, scientists could reach different parts of the island, including higher elevations, to collect geological and biological samples. For example, Lauritz Somme, 1986, used Nair collections via helicopter to inventory Bouvet's arthropods. The Nair team also installed an automated weather station, AWS, which recorded meteorological data before the harsh environment damaged it. Since then, most activity has been limited to brief summer landings by research teams or survey vessels. In 1985, a Norwegian expedition managed, under clear skies, to photograph the entire island from the air, finally producing an accurate map. The island's only manned facility is the Norvegia Station, an NPI summer base established in 1978, which holds a meteorological weather outpost and can house up to -6 persons in summer. This station is unstaffed in winter and only operates seasonally, typically December to February, for meteorology and occasional research support. In recent decades, Bouvet has also been the objective of amateur expeditions. For example, the expedition ship Hans Explorer briefly landed in 2012 to attempt climbing the summit. More famously, Bouvet, callsign prefix 3I0, is a coveted DXCC entity for amateur radio operators. The 3YDJ expedition in January to February 2023 aimed to land on Bouvet and operate radio equipment, but was forced to cut short the landing due to severe weather. Such visits underscore the island's difficult access. Landings usually require favourable seas and helicopters, like the 1964 Protector, or those used by Nair, are rare and invaluable for reaching shore. Overall, human presence on Bouvet has been fleeting. All access is tightly controlled under Norwegian jurisdiction. Logistics are formidable. Supplies must be delivered by ship with a narrow summer window and stormy seas. Ice make access unpredictable. There are no commercial installations or tourism facilities. Protective measures include strict permit requirements for any landing, and Norway's recognition of Bouvet as a nature reserve, sea below, prohibits most activities aside from approved science. The research history has nevertheless been productive. Topographic surveys, geology, mapping the volcano, botany, limnology, and especially marine ecology and wildlife monitoring have yielded key findings. In sum, human activity has been limited, scientific, and generally low impact, largely involving brief expeditions, data collection, and air reconnaissance. Conservation status and efforts. Bouvet Island is formally protected as a nature reserve by Norway. On December 17, 1971, the entire island and surrounding territorial waters were declared a Norwegian nature reserve. This status prohibits commercial exploitation of the land or its fauna, and regulates human visits strictly. The reserve covers the island, plus a marine zone, 12 nautical mile territorial sea, and Norway's claimed exclusive economic zone beyond. The purpose is to safeguard Bouvet's pristine ecosystems and its globally important wildlife assemblages. The conservation significance of Bouvet is high. It hosts one of only 4 remnant fur seal populations that survived 19th century sealing, and its large rookery is critical for the species' recovery. The island is also classified as an important bird area, IBA, by BirdLife International because of its vast seabird colonies, including macaroni, chinstrap, and Adelie penguins, around 60 to 100,000 breeding pairs, and southern fulmars, 100,000 individuals. Although not explicitly asked, these birds underline Bouvet's biodiversity value. In fact, estimates from 1978 to 79 put the island's penguin population at approximately 117,000 birds, mixed colonies, making it one of the largest in Antarctica. Nyrosa is the principal breeding beach for both seals and many seabirds, formed only recently by geological upheaval. Despite its reserve status, Bouvet faces conservation challenges. Its great isolation makes enforcement of regulations very difficult. The surrounding Southern Ocean waters fall under KMLR, the Antarctic Fisheries Convention, but even under such treaties illegal, unreported and unregulated, IUU, fishing is a problem in remote subantarctic waters. Studies have shown significant discrepancies between reported fish catches and reconstructed estimates, implicating Bouvet's EEZ in global IUU fishing activity. Toothfish and other high-value species are likely targeted illicitly in the area. Climate change also looms as a long-term threat. Warming could alter ice cover and prey distributions around Bouvet, potentially impacting the specialized biota. To date, key conservation measures are institutional and regulatory. The 1971 Reserve Proclamation, under Norwegian law, is the primary protection. Norway has extended its continental shelf claim around Bouvet to 400 nanometers, pending UN ratification, to assert control over the marine realm. Scientific monitoring programs, for example annual fur seal pup counts, elephant seal surveys, help track population trends. There have been proposals to create a formal marine protected area, MPA, around Bouvet. Indeed, the area is recognized in international conservation discourse, for example, as an important marine mammal area for fur seals and whales. Krill fisheries in the region are managed by key TMLR, which allocates quotas to prevent overexploitation. For example, Acre Biomarine was granted a krill fishing concession near Bouvet in the 2000s, underlining the need to balance exploitation with ecosystem needs. The presence of extensive krill and healthy predator populations has led some to question whether existing krill catch limits are truly sustainable for wildlife.